one of an ongoing series of seminars for faculty development entitled Changing the Syllabus for Pluralism and Diversity. This is a continuation from the 1991-92 Faculty Development Seminars, sponsored by the Office of the President, Office of Academic Affairs, and the Pluralism and Diversity Committee here at MEC College. The plan for this semester is to have 3 seminars. Today is a seminar for changing the syllabus for balancing the curriculum in business and public administration. On November 11th, we will have presentations concerning resources for changing the curriculum. And December 9 will be the awards and certificate of participation. Each member of our faculty who have been attending the seminars will receive a certificate. The awards are the monetary incentive awards that will be presented for the 2 categories of syllabi change submitted by faculty. There will be a review committee of these syllabi, and they will choose the best representative of the most change, as well as ones that have made significant change. You will see that there are guidelines that have been circulating around the college. We have the guidelines for submission here today, as well as a bibliography that can assist you in this change. One other thing is that we have changed the deadline from October 19th to October 30th. So you still have an opportunity to submit your syllabi. Please submit it to my attention. I'm chairperson of the Planning Committee for the Faculty Development Seminars, Yvonne Bennett. I'm located in the library. Today, as I indicated before, we are continuing with our seminar. This particular one is Balancing the Curriculum in Business, Economics, and Public Administration. We're pleased to have as our guest presenters Professor Beverly Copeland, who is a professor of business at BMCC in the CUNY system. She has also formerly taught here at MEC College. There is Veronica Udegalanya from our Caribbean Research Center, whose specialty is in economics. And last but certainly not least is Professor Bob Cherry, who is at Brooklyn College. Because of time constraints, we're asking that each presenter give their presentation, and we would like to hold any questions till after the 3rd presenter. So if Professor Beverly Copeland would come forward and start the presentations. Beverly?
It's good to be back at MEC. I used to teach finance here several years ago, and I see some of my good friends are still holding down portfolios. In order to incorporate issues of diversity into business curriculum, I think it's important to take a 2-pronged approach. One is to address issues that are raised by the minority manager, him or herself, and another approach is to address issues raised by corporate culture. When I teach, especially when I teach business courses, what I try to do is I try to draw from my over 12 years as a manager and consultant to major corporations, draw from my experience and relate different issues that were raised during my period of corporate life in the classroom. For example, I always address the issue of how to handle being new on a job. That's a very important concern of the new minority manager, because often he feels alienated and isolated because he's only one Another question that I address, or issue that I address, is how to network. Networking is very, very important. I would argue that affirmative action is the minority's network. It's our old boy or old girl network. We don't have daddy in the organization, or uncle, or mommy, or whoever, but we have some draw into the corporate environment, corporate structure, because we have affirmative action, which guarantees that a certain an effort will be made to hire minority managers. So networking is very important, and I try to teach my students the importance of networking and how to network. Also, I teach my students how to deal with corporate politics. The corporate environment is highly politicized, and students who haven't worked as managers before, or haven't worked in the corporate environment before, are really baffled by the high degree of politicization of the corporate environment. And it's not I study politics both as an undergraduate and graduate student, and I'd say that the politics of the corporate environment is not really like the politics that you study in political science. It's more akin to the politics that you study in anthropology, the very primitive, the politics of the tribe. And you have to learn how to maneuver and to deal within a very primitive type of environment, where which is often blatantly unfair and discriminatory. So we have to teach students how to cope with these highly politicized environment in which alliances have been drawn that we cannot participate in, but that we aspire to network and become a part of. I also teach my students steps to advancing within the corporate environment, because everyone wants to advance. No one wants to stay in the same position for a number of years without moving up the corporate ladder. And usually I stress the importance of knowing the criteria involved in your organization or in your department necessary for advancement. What skills do I need to move up to that next position? Who do I have to work with in order to promote myself and to let management know that I'm eager to move on to the next step in the corporate ladder? I also stress the importance of developing skills, because even though you may have mastered a particular job, it's important to develop new skills to move on and to be marketable to the organization. If you only have a limited expertise, that means that you have limited import in the organization. So I stress to my students the importance of developing skills, not being laid back, but being assertive and wanting to learn, being eager to learn, being eager to grow and to develop within the corporate structure. I also tell my students that it's very important not to burn bridges. It's very important to be nice to everyone, because one never knows who's going to be in a position to help in the future. And I also stress that really networking and not burning bridges is critical among one's peer group, because more than likely you're going to get that position from a friend, typically another minority that you either work with or gone to school with, someone that may be doing well in an organization. There may be a vacancy in an organization that someone that you know is doing well, and they may have the leverage to draw you in or to bring you in because they are a proven performer in the organization and they are respected. And in fact, a number of the jobs that I've gotten in corporations and consulting have come from friends who were highly regarded within the particular organization. Not necessarily at high levels, but highly regarded at their level, whatever it was. And I also stress to my students that it's very important to learn the corporate culture of the organization that you're in. Different organizations have different corporate culture. An advertising firm will have a laid-back, laissez-faire type of corporate culture where you can do your own thing, you can dress casually, you can wait, just so long as you're creative. But a investment banking, which is highly pressured and very demanding, or banking itself in general, requires a certain conservative approach that managers must be in touch with if they work within the banking industry. So you wouldn't have the same corporate culture in a bank that you would have in an advertising firm. So you should be aware of the kind of corporate culture that you have within your organization. I find this a very useful approach in helping my students understand what the role of the minority manager is within a firm. Then the second prong of my approach is to discuss the impact of the corporation itself on the minority manager. I discuss questions like, have minority managers been beneficiaries or casualties of corporate policy? Have we benefited from things like affirmative action or seniority policy, or have we lost out as a result of these policies? And then I discuss what types of corporate culture are most conducive to minority progress. I found, in my experience, corporations that are consumer-oriented tend to offer minorities more opportunities for advancement because their customers are minorities. But something in which a minority is not really a relevant customer or client, that type of organization would not have an active affirmative action or minority retention policy. But you'll find that consumer corporations tend to have better records for minority. Then I address the question of what has been the corporate track record for minorities. How have corporations fared in their promotion and retention of minority managers? And then I look at the role of minority organizations in corporate culture. What impact do these organizations that lobby for minority causes have within the corporate culture and the corporate environment? And then I look at the benefits of multicultural management. Increasingly, multicultural management is going to be a theme of the American corporation as the workforce grows in diversity. With a variety of immigrant groups coming to America, it's just obvious that over time there's going to be a need to appreciate the different advantages that different groups, ethnic and racial and religious groups, can offer to the corporate environment. And then I look at some of the important strategies for success promulgated by top managers in Fortune 500 companies. And then I take a look at what corporations can do to ensure proper attention to diversity in the management ranks. Can corporations provide seminars, lecture series, retreats to discuss the whole issue of diversity, multiculturalism, and minority advancement within the advantages and the importance of these things within the corporation? And then finally, what I look at is, again, what can the minority manager do, him or herself, to ensure corporate success? And by addressing the issues raised in the questions and understanding of the politics of corporate culture and diversity and the role of the minority manager within the corporate environment can be better understood. And I find that this is a very useful technique for making my students aware of their role and responsibility and the role and responsibility of the corporation to ensure the success of the minority manager. Thank you.
Okay, I teach economics, and economics is one of the courses that are obviously in most business curriculum. And let me try to give some sense of what are the things that can be done with economics to let it join multiculturalism, as certainly humanities have to some degree. Economics is often taught in a very sterile way. That is, it emphasizes economic principles, and only after developing a whole series of what might be characterized as universalistic principles, holding for all people, all companies, all decision makers, So that it is a fairly daunting task to change the economics curriculum when one has this structure of process. It's also somewhat daunting in economics because economics is sort of textbook oriented, so that you're really dominated in many ways by what the textbooks perceive as the relevant topics and the order in which they are taken. I would argue that to integrate multiculturalism and diversity in economics, which I would define as integrating in the analysis of topics and issues that are directly related to women, African Americans, and other people of color, really requires confronting both the organization of economics, this beginning with universalistic principles, and following only in a very secondary and tertiary way with topics of interest, of use. That has to be somewhat broken down. And secondly, certainly at this point, it really requires people to use supplemental material. That the nature of the textbooks are that they have very, very little that one can directly take as the body that students can come to the class with as to be informed. And let me just take one example. African American unemployment rates, particularly for African American males. You might find it surprising, but if you would take virtually any textbook in economics, macroeconomics, which is the study of overall, if they have one page on this issue, that would be a lot. Now, there's certainly discussion about employment, but never focused on these quite high rates for African American men, which are usually about double or more the rate for the overall economy. And so when there's discussions of generating full employment is meant to be, or high employment is when the overall unemployment rate is 5, 5.5, 6%. That alone is questionable, but even if we take that as a benchmark, there's virtually no discussion of why when the overall unemployment rate is 5, 5.5%, it's 12% for African American men. So it creates certainly a situation in which faculty have to take much more initiative and supplement what is presented in the textbooks that they are undoubtedly using. The second, and how this is somewhat related to the issue of universalistic principles, is that essentially those principles break down. That is, what appears to hold for all people, whether it's men or women, black or white, those principles really don't hold when you focus on particular issues. So, again, I would say in the macro course, people will have to supplement the kinds of material that are given. The other point about topics, there are a variety of topics that may, in and of themselves, not seem to be multicultural. Housing, for example. But certainly issues that touch disproportionately on people of color. So that when someone selects a textbook, textbooks do cover some social issues, housing, crime. I would recommend that people who are teaching pick those textbooks which give them the opportunity to discuss the social issues. You may not particularly agree with the way the textbook handles crime, handles housing, but it gives you an entry point to discuss those issues. And once more, by and large, there will be the need to supplement the material that's in the textbook. And let me just sort of give one reason why, even when the textbooks cover the topic, there's really a need to supplement. And that is the way economics as a whole, obviously not individuals, but as a whole, treat many of these topics. By and large, the profession use the free market as being efficient and equitable. And at most, there are blemishes to the benefits of basically an unregulated system. 2 days ago, or 3 days ago, the Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded to Gary Becker. Gary Becker is an economist who has had a profound effect on the inclusion of social topics in economics. Economics of the family, economics of discrimination, economics of crime. It's really his work in the 50s and 60s that set the stage for economists to do all kinds of things in these areas. But Becker's approach is very specific, and that is, his view is that discrimination is combated by market forces, so that there would be no need for affirmative action, there would be no need for any kind of government intervention. The market would solve the problem. And hence, if there's inequality of income, it must be because there's inequality of skills, that the market pays people fairly. So, and one could say the same thing if I discussed his work on crime, his discussion on family. So that when one even has a textbook that modestly covers the kinds of topics that we might want to have as entry points for a discussion that would be more meaningful for an urban student population, certainly one of Medgar Evers, which is overwhelmingly non-white. One has to be careful because those presentations are very conservative, and not that that is necessarily means it should be presented, but it would then lead to a very unbalanced presentation of these topics. So that, I mean, economics has a number of problems in terms of its structure, in terms of the way certain content is presented, that really requires instructors to be very sensitive and to be willing to almost required to enhance what they do in the textbooks that they're essentially forced to use. I mean, it's just not a course that can be organized with a packet that someone could have at a copy center year. There's a real need for a unifying point that a textbook provides, but then, as I mentioned, one needs these supplements. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My presentation this afternoon will be focused on balancing the curriculum by gender. Incidentally, the previous speaker is an economist, and I am an economist, obviously a woman. So I will try this afternoon to show why it is necessary to sensitize our teaching towards equity and balance, rather than supplement. As I was jotting down most of the things that the previous speaker mentioned, he was more in particular talking about supplementing materials. And the key issue about balancing the curriculum does not have to do with supplementing. It has to do with equity, with balancing it out. And when we focus on that aspect, we look at the structure of the various disciplines, whether it's business, whether it's begin by saying that many new materials have come out in recent time, focusing on curriculum changes. And the tendency is that to make people happy, either politically or otherwise, we might suggest the inclusion of these materials randomly. That's what has been going on. You find people in schools, in colleges, in universities, you have new materials that are suggested to be added. But we know the concept of balancing a curriculum goes beyond conscious intermissions and random injections of, materials, either along gender line or race or class. Balancing the curriculum by gender means viewing women and men equally and having a centered perspective. Above all, viewing women as a subject of study, not as an object in someone else's experiences. The institution, by the way, if I may just step back a little bit, in the institutions of higher learning, we have curriculum based on male-dominated society. This is the truth. They were all constructed, the content, the techniques, everything, based on history, on male domination. Tremendous efforts have been done in recent years to awaken consciousness in both in academic and in society to the need for balancing the curriculum. Now, this tremendous volume of new material and new knowledge is out there. People have spent years in research, a lot of money, tremendous amounts of money involved in research. How do we get it into the classroom? How do we convince our younger generation that they should go out there and think objectively and look at issues on merit? How do we do that? The answer to this is bifocal. First of all, we have problem with sensitizing the administration. We have problem with sensitizing the faculty, because we know that curriculum does not teach itself. It has to be taught by somebody. And also, curriculum is usually, prescribed by a committee or a group. So we have to take care of those doing the prescription and those who are actually carrying it out on a day-to-day basis in the classroom. Why is it important? It is important so that the students who will now push out into society when they are ready are not handicapped in any way. Some of the female students feel lost and feel that the whole curriculum is not talking to them. They don't feel a part of it. Because when you're talking of great scientists, great lawyers, great professors, you have those who were already there in the system. But we know that due to encouragement and new emphasis, we have women who have come up. So what I'm saying in effect is that we need more and more to look at the core of how the content of education will begin with, looking at, as a female faculty, what would I do differently from the male faculty that would suggest balance or equity? How would I go about it? To begin with, women teach the image of women as strong, equally capable, intelligent, and effective in taking their place in the world with men, rather than constantly being apologetic when examples have to be given. In addition, women must insist that curriculum include materials on women's role with worldly models of women scientists, artists, diplomats, writers, presidents, and world leaders. All these examples abound in society. Women must ensure that these are brought to the forefront so that for a better balance tomorrow, young people will rise up to the challenge of the future and be more sensitive to issues relating to women. And at least they will have a choice. Women must insist that existing curriculum steer faculty and administrators away from images, texts, and materials that reinforce the stereotype of women that we have in society. And we must try as much as possible to reject male perspectives that are imposed on society. And these male perspectives have been accepted as universal perspectives. In balancing the curriculum, no one single course can systematically eradicate the inherent male-oriented status quo. Rather, conscious and deliberate efforts at integration of relevant texts and materials in every day-to-day task of molding the minds of all the students is what we need. However, as a starting point, at least one course emphasizing texts, materials, and knowledge that will sensitize students along gender lines should be designated as a requirement for graduation from all institutions of higher learning in the country. That is very important. At least it shows, and that when they go out there, they have been sensitized enough. Change is imperative so that intellectual honesty and bias-free education and exchange can prevail. A balanced curriculum will thus encourage development of positive self-esteem and self-management skills needed in all women for survival in the larger society. The question now is, as an economist, how would I balance the curriculum by gender? We know that economics is based on positivism, on theories. We accept those theories, but we also know that there are aspects of applied economics that can be, sensitized in such a way that they will reflect the reality of society. After all, what is economics? It's only ways that human beings try to manage the scarce resources that are available to meet the obvious unlimited ones that exist. So what will make the difference? Why wouldn't we then look at issues as they exist and as they are in real society, rather than be apologetic about it? There are basic assumptions in terms of subject matter and methods, and even contents of economics, and also the sort of questions that are posed. These assumptions derive from economics' long-standing commitment to a positive empirical framework and its implication for methodology. And like I've said before, positive methods and framework is okay, but where we have the problem is with the applied side of economics. You find that in sticking strictly to theory and abstract terms, you tend to marginalize women. I will show how economics have done that, how economics has indeed marginalized women. The first critical issue is the denial of context. The denial of context. By denying the impact of social, political, and economic forces on the activities that constitute economic theory and practices, we have failed to attend to how those forces have been responsible for marginalizing women, precluding women's participation and visibility in society and also in the discipline itself. Let us consider the traditional women's work in labor economics. How do we submit these topics to positive analysis? Topics such as wages, such as the impact of women's work on the household, such as childbirth and its impact on women's work, such as the whole issue of being a woman and being a mother and being a worker. How do we effectively expose these analyses to pure theory without falling into the trap of marginalization, which indeed economics have done? Therefore, stripping economics of context has resulted in stripping economics of much of women and women-related work. My second focus is on the denial of values. Refusal to acknowledge that science is not as objective as it claims has allowed economists to cling to the belief that economics is a value-free discipline, where unbiased fact comprises the professional literature. Consequently, if women and their work are absent from economic records, and we know that they are very absent, look at national income accounting. There's no reflection of work done at home, which can be quantified by using shadow prices and dummy variables. We can quantify those because pay for somebody to go and do exactly the same thing, and you see how much it costs. So these records are excluded from the body of economic records. And if you exclude them, they are excluded in GMP, they are excluded in all meaningful academic exercise. What it is saying in effect is that women are invisible. Issues such as the place of women in society and the role of economics in maintaining that place are critical in the whole question of balancing the economy. The question before us is how to apply proven, sensitized models to economics curriculum so as to design courses that include women as an integral part of the discipline. Our focus should be on the history of how economics started and also on the research methodology and techniques. Despite the briefness of this presentation, it is hoped that suggestions of how to come up with a more sensitive curriculum in economics faculty and administration would focus on the framework and the structure of economics rather than supplementing the statistics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Veronica. I'd like to thank our presenters today. Professor Copeland had to leave early due to another commitment on her own campus. I want members of the planning committee to stand, but a special thank you must go to the coordinator of today's activity, Professor Joyce Seiler, who is also chairperson of the Pluralism and Diversity Committee, formerly known as Balancing the Curriculum for Gender, Race, Ethnicity, and Class. Joyce, thank you very much.
I'd just like to say thank you to all of the speakers for today, and to point out to Professor Cherry that he did not mention his book, Discrimination Against, or I may have the title wrong, Discrimination Against Blacks, Women, and
It's
Children.
economic impact of class, women, and children.
Okay. Economics impact.
Okay. I would like to open the floor now for any questions or comments from the audience. Yes, Professor Azuma.
I have one or two comments to make.
Would you care to come forward so we can get it on tape? You should notice that we do videotape the proceedings of these faculty seminars so that our colleagues who are not able to attend may view it in our media services department, or you who are here may have an opportunity to review any comments, etc.
Thank you. I only have a very small comment to make. In terms of economics, I think we do have a problem here. For instance, the second speaker mentioned about using supplements to meet the requirement of inclusion. The last speaker talked about integrating it into the main curriculum. The problem is that economics as a whole does take into account inclusion. But when you talk about specific sections of economics, then we have a problem. For instance, we talk about principles. The only way we can get inclusion in principles is through supplements. But if you look at economics as an area of study, it does include women. It does have something to do with gender. So that I want to make this distinction very clear when we begin to focus on inclusion, gender, race, but also, more importantly, I'd actually point out that if we focus on labor economics deals extensively with gender, but also with ethnic ethnicity. So that we cannot say that at the conception, at the principle level, that we can do that. We cannot, because what principle level does is to begin to build a framework of analysis. If you don't know what we're going to be talking about, then how can you include anything in that particular framework? So that at principles level, it is only possible to use supplements. And in most cases, these supplements may even distract students from the major difficulty is how can you put price and what is the equivalent of how it's going to go in terms of the market? Because if we, since we generally use market price in terms of GMP, so how can we relate what's going to go and the market price? That's one problem. The second is that we take need to distinguish between certain type of work. For instance, if you get somebody to come and paint the house for you, definitely it will be included. But if you just bake a loaf of bread, how can we then begin to look at bread? Because we already included flour in the accounting. So how then can we begin to look at that activity of baking in relation to activity of baking that has been actually put price on in the market? So there's a question of difficulty in terms of pricing, not necessarily downgrading women as such.
One minute. Yeah, I was thinking,
Can I
before,
No, before we lose,
okay, we're going to have
this is
to.
an academic exercise. What the example that he used in terms of the flour and the bread, I know and he knows that there's such a thing as value added concept. And that will take care of it. If men and women equally have to bear the responsibility of taking care of the home, believe me, tomorrow they will find a way of adding that particular
Okay, Bob, Cherry, Keith Gillian, Ola, and Sheila.
Well, I was going to say that this example of household work and value would have been an example that I would have given of one more case where in the principles course you don't find it, maybe one or two texts. You find it, but it's still in the context of the principles becomes a supplement. I think it's quite critical, for example, in students' understanding of the difference between GNP as a measure of market production and if you want a measure of social welfare, so that it is certainly something that can be relatively easily integrated in. It won't confuse students. It will eliminate a confusion, and that is the confusion that they have where often GNP statistics are given as signals of welfare when in fact they're not signals. And it was very critical in the 1980s where per capita GNP might have increased for some groups, two adult households, but if you took into account a broader social measure, time, there's much more time spent in the marketplace, less household production, you would find that even for those households that had an increase in market income, that their social welfare was clearly lower. But again, it raises the issue still that for better or worse in the principles course, unless those things change, and individually we don't really have the capacity, macro and micro have certain roles that they play, and they're difficult courses for students. I mean, one of the things that I found in teaching is there's many of the broader issues that the last speaker mentioned I would love to do in the principles course. But the reality is you have all kinds of difficulty and you have to make trade-offs. In my own mind, I think that while you allow students to have some understanding that there are some basic assumptions which we might not fully accept, that the curriculum is based on it. But supplements are a way of generating a kernel of doubt much broader, because when you raise these topics that show that there is substantial inequity in the system, it lays open the groundwork for a more thoroughgoing critique, which is, who would disagree with that?
I think Keith was next.
Yeah, some of the comments that I'm hearing way, it seems as though we're making an assumption that new textbooks can't get written. It's either textbooks as is, or no textbooks, or textbooks plus supplements. It seems to me, from my perspective in the social sciences and humanities, is that one of the things that goes along with the intent to balance curriculum for whatever variable is that you begin to work on some new books. So that in fact the introductory course has a text which includes these issues. So it seems to me that rather than simply to do the brilliant academic folks that we like to do that, maybe on the level of the textbook, some economists need to get together, economic teachers need to get together so that these things can be brought up. I mean, I'm not an economist, but I think that if the issue that Zuma and the sister here were debating, I think I could understand that if it was broken down in the textbook about what the economic policy that there's a general GMP concept, but the concept of value added has an ultimate part of that equation, so on and so forth. I think if that's written into the textbook, I think I can get there. I'm not all that right. I think that's part of the solution too. I mean, stop treating the textbooks as though they're fixed entities that they can't be changed.
And wouldn't that be true?
No, because we have a pecking order here. Yeah. We won't lose the point, because that is one of the issues when you come to balancing the curriculum. It's one of the strong issues of whether you're going to do an inclusion or whether you're going to do a supplement, and the whole area of creating new textbooks for our students. Some teachers will not even use a textbook, prefer to use other creative materials that have been researched, etc., within the classroom structure. So those are options that you as a faculty member must decide on too. Yes, Ola?
I want to understand something that Dr. Zuma said. Are you saying that you can't put a value on housework?
Okay, let me, because it's not exactly what can I talk now? It's not that
30 words or less.
There are certain type of housework in our bodies. There is a big debate in court as to how you can value a house done at home. I mean, activities done at home versus the market price, because we use market price for GLP.
Right, okay.
Now, the question is, supposing you bake bread, a loaf of bread, how can you compare, how can you put a price and have it equivalent to a loaf of bread in the market? So that's where the problem is. Secondly, there's also a problem of double counting. You see, it's a whole lot of problems. And then, so in order to avoid the multiplicity of these problems, we eliminate work done at home by the person who is going to use the particular outcome of it.
All right, but what about domestic workers?
Oh no, that is included. If you pay a domestic worker, that is included in GMA. But if you yourself, you work for yourself, we don't include it. But if you got somebody to do it for you, you're going to pay the person. Is included. So yes, so there's a little distinction. Oh, but let me also address this. Economics, you see, people don't seem to think economics is something like Shakespeare or sociology or something like that. No, it's not. You see, economics is based on principles.
So it's literature.
And these principles are all, and it's a well-defined principle. And these principles underlie all the courses in business. So that if you move away from the principle, after you have completed the principles, then you can move away into other areas. And then it becomes, you can include...
Before we get too far, okay, who was the last person to respond? Okay, Sheila, you were next, and then me.
Dr. Zuma knows how much I appreciate this discussion because we've gone round and round on this. I wanted to generate a course in the honors program, interdisciplinary study seminar on economics. And when we started talking about such issues as these, I heard these arguments from Dr. Zuma, and I felt very much at a loss because not being an economist, I could not argue some of the concepts that we discussed here, and it
talking, she's making statements. She's making statements, okay? And one good example about between the flour and the bread is time on the cross, where they did apply economic principles to slavery and came up wanting. The principles came up wanting. Okay? Are there any other comments from the audience? Yes, Roosevelt.
Yeah, no, the comment I just want to make is that I think it's very easy to actually apply the issue in economics. For instance, if you look at the fact that today we have a lot of women working, that means you have husband and wife working. Okay, if you compare that to a household where you have only the husband working and the wife is not working, all you have to do is do a research and collect data on where the two households work, the effect of two households working, and compare to only the husband working, and that could be plugged into economics, because that is when only the husband works, the wife, the domestic work can be equated to an opportunity cost, since we have data when the wife is working. Okay? So when the wife does not work, we can equate it to what a woman who works earns. It's a matter of how we want to deal with the data, and economists can do whatever they want to do, because that's an area they have not looked at.
Okay, pecking order. Veronica, Keith, Bob is our guest, and then Zuma.
I would just like to state that just as principles is very important, vital, and necessary in economics, so it is in humanity, so it is in law. It is the basis upon which other things grow. I'm still going back to the national income account, and I am stating that with the bulk of academic knowledge that we have today, because a lot of research has been done, a lot of shadow pricing has been used, dummy variables have been used to prove these things academically. I am just saying that when we change the so-called market prices and the non-market prices, society decide which are market prices and which are non-market prices. Those can be changed. This is academic exercise. If you present yours and I present mine and we put them through the test and rigor and it does not stand, then it will not, be accepted as law. So what I'm saying, let nobody sit down and decide what kind of activities should pay activities and what should not. A simple example is if the federal government decides today to give an allowance of about $2,500 to each married woman for housework, you will find that it will begin to appear in the national income account. As what? Because you will now be able to pay and give your productive hours to, work, paid work. At least there's an allowance. You see, there has to be a human face in academic exercises. And that's what we are saying. When you have a married home, and we know that individual households in society make up the economy. If you come home and your house is unkept, and you have no food on the table, you have nothing, if the immediate impulse is to be upset, and it affects the whole family, and it moves into society. What I'm saying is that the women working is very, very essential to upholding society. And it's high time we begin to build it into academic framework, into curriculum, and let the children, the young ones, realize this, work with it, appreciate it, so that when they go out there, they will know to survive.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with that. But another thing, again, the argument with interdisciplinary look at the discourse, you know, analyze the discourse about economics, that we can see that the discourse is like with gender bias. That loaf of bread becomes the example for talking about the value added, you know, input of women, and painting the house becomes the analogy for a man. The premise or the example for the home where one works and one doesn't is if the man works and the wife is at home, as opposed to maybe the wife works and the man is wherever. I mean, might be. I mean, even that. I mean, sometimes we need to get some distance from ourselves so that we see the language that we count things. And the language reflects our perspective and attitudes towards any type of change along gender lines.
Very true. Bob?
Well, I think though that we could go over each one of these examples forever. This loaf of bread issue. I just want to say one more point on it though. GMP accounts do in fact have imputed rents in it. That is, the housing market is viewed as so important that if you live in your own house, GMP accounts include the imputed or the estimated services, so when they think it's important, they'll do it. But when they don't think it's important, they won't. The other thing is that if you would look at the textbooks in the 1970s, many more textbooks had this imputed household. Citibank, in fact, I remember one textbook had a chart where it found it imputed, I think it was in 78, 79, the value of a house like was $13,000. The Citibank came up with these numbers, and a number of textbooks had it. But because of a variety of changes, both within the profession and Reaganism or whatever, those things have left. So certainly, textbooks and the profession can include much more than it does without sacrificing its principles, the concept of principles. But the reality is, I think at this point, it doesn't do that. African-American male employment, there's no reason why that can't be in a first course in economics when unemployment is discussed. It just isn't. So I think that while it would be nice to have these textbooks, and there may be mechanisms through which there's the National Economics Association, which is primarily the Association of Black Economists. There may be organizational vehicles to try to create a broader environment within the profession that make certain things credible. I mean, I'm on a national committee that's sort of associated with the American Economics Association. We got from the Ford Foundation a grant where for next May for 1 week at Hampton University, there's going to be a 1-week set of seminars on balancing the principles of economics course for race, gender, and ethnicity. And if there are people who would be interested, I can give you an application. I can get you an application, but you know, it's a continuum, and I think really at this point, it's not what I would love, but the reality is supplements are really the only direction.
Okay, as the moderator, I must bring us to a closure. Zuma was the next one. Keith, since you're a non-economist, yes, you must make your last remark.
I think there is a misconception here. In teaching the courses, you do have examples. You do make references to gender, race, or ethnicity. But to include it in the text is what I'm talking about. Yeah? If you recall, that has been a very big debate in the field as to how we're going to handle household. We do have two tracks. The one that included that immediate values. But the problem that we are running into is because GMP is the foundation for making a lot of decisions. So in other words, if you're looking at anything in society, you look at GMP. Then if you imputed it, you will be overstating.
You don't have to include it in GMP, but you have to include it as a measure to generate what is the social welfare.
That's correct.
No
problem.
That's good enough.
There's no problem.
Who cares about GMP?
No, the question we're talking about is
different way in English. The professor started moving a different way, and then salesman came around, and I used to just tell them flat, I'm not interested in that type of book. They catch on because it's time they want. And then they would come back, and I would say, oh, I don't want to see that. They said, oh, I know you want those kind of books. We get some of those.
Yeah.
They wanted to make, they wanted the books, and they wanted to manufacture them to meet the demand. So I mean, that's still doable. I mean, on the one hand, it don't exist. On the other hand, there's a dynamic tension by which they can be run the demand. I think that's important.
Okay. Hunter?
Yeah, it's, I don't know why Azuma keeps, man, this stuff was overturned over 20 years ago. And I know because I did some papers on domestic labor. I'm a political economist too.
I know.
So I know that is pure positivist thinking. That has nothing to do with reality. It has to do with a particular ideology that economists, male economists have developed over the years and have now made it into law. All we have to do as one of the innovative colleges in the country is to just start to develop ways whereby we develop our own economic text and expand it into political economy, which is what it should be anyway, and make it so that other people can begin to use us as a guide for how we can create a whole economic understanding. And that's, I mean, that's not a hard thing to do. It's something that I think this college is set up for, and something that we should engage in. But the other stuff about not being, that's just
Okay, thank you very much, Hunter. I'd like to make one final comment to closure, and that is one of the things that we hope would come out of the faculty development seminars is not only your change in teaching strategies, but also the materials that you use. And if the materials that you use includes sitting down with a group or by yourself and dealing with writing a new textbook that reflects the balancing of the curriculum through GREC, okay, then so be it. Next session, November 11th, I believe, we will be discussing the resources. We'll have presenters here dealing with the resources that can be made available to you to help you do this kind of thing. Become creative in the classroom. That's all our students are really asking. Thank you. In the lecture hall.